with John. And so I'm a firm believer, like EPN and both UCS have a model in place that, does a little bit of that kind of context discovery, kind of the matchmaking piece for you. But I think even with the service that EPN and UCS provide, it's still important for you to think about, again, as Bonnie put, like how you listen, what you do with that listening, and just some ways of working within community where you keep equity and justice at the forefront of your conversation. So, John, if you're ready for me to bug you with a couple of questions, and maybe everybody in the room knows who you are and knows your experience, but just in case somebody doesn't know, can you share with us a little bit of your work, either through EPN or a previous job that included working with community partners? How did the engagement begin? What was the goal? Yeah, give us a little bit of that background.
Okay, I think I learned more from teaching high school in Detroit than I did at EPA on that issue. I'll just put it that way, and that's why I went. That air pollution there was why I went back to school to work to join EPA. So I think we did some good and all that kind of stuff. But that's 33 years. So I have vast experience in community relations here. There are about 10 months of it so far. As a matter of fact, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I have begun to do it because it was something we could, after fighting the forces of darkness for 4 years, EPN had some other things we could do, and this was one of them that interests me. And the idea, at least at the beginning, was we've got 500 people, some expertise in a lot of areas. There are environmental groups that are connected with community groups that will come in and tell EPN, we need somebody that knows about methyl ethyl chicken wire or something else. And in my case, it was usually some kind of monitoring. So I took several things based on that, a couple of others based on some others, and only 2 of the 5, I think, things directly involved environmental justice, I think. And so I've had this experience in going to a city where I spent time in, Louisville, Kentucky, and dealing with a group of residents in Western Louisville that were exposed to very high levels of hazardous air pollutants. This is a classic case, and I think what they wanted to know. We want to do monitoring. They've had some success with reductions, but the state won't monitor anymore. They don't know what they're breathing, but it stinks. And cancer rates are high, death rates are high. So I learned the background because another group came to EPN and said, there's some people that want to know how to monitor VOCs in Louisville, Kentucky. That's all I got. So I talked to the group and I said, well, it could be a lot of things. First of all, I'm not necessarily an expert in VOC monitoring, but I know plenty of them. And so I just need to know, why do you want to measure it and what do you want to measure? And it took them 2 days to answer that, in the sense of what they really realized is they wanted to measure a lot of particular hydrocarbons that were potentially toxic or caused the odors that they smelled in the community. So it took some time, just that first communication. And then over some time, we went back and forth over what they wanted. I gave them some information, and then all of a sudden, it was like, we were supposed to have a meeting to talk about it, and they kept putting it off because these people, by the way, I have to meet with them after, like at 7 o'clock, because they work all day. Right? These people hold jobs. These people have kids, and when it got to be summertime, they had to take care of the kids. So they just stopped doing anything in summer. And I would have told you, I don't know what happened except that the day before yesterday, one of them called me and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about this. And apparently they had gone to somebody else at the University of Louisville, and it was basically a sham. So I'm back with it. But in the process, I learned that there was a time when EPA research people came in and were doing testing of equipment for community monitoring eventually, and for sources to use. And they were researchers. But they said, look, we've got some data here, we'll present it to the community. So they presented it to the community, and the community was, this particular group was particularly enraged that this group wouldn't hang in and do more monitoring and help them out, when in fact in the research thing. And so I have been trying, and I started to do it again yesterday, to be a bridge between the ORD people who actually do care about the community, but that's not their job, and then talk to people in EPN that are thinking about getting OIR to do things. That's stuff that these people don't even know I'm doing. But the bottom line is, I had to really quickly change my normal sense of what EPA is, and what the tensions were about, and where there was kind of an anger. I went to a Facebook page and saw what they were writing, and I sent what they were writing to the head in ORD who knows about this, who was going to run this kind of a program, and to the people who are doing the work. This kind of this anger and mistrust, in essence, that had happened, and I'd like to do something about that, and that's has nothing to do when I came in to do. It's
Mhm.
just part of the experience. It's kind of raw, and it's not done. It's not neat in the bow, but it's but I learned something about it, and I also learned that just because you lived in Louisville for a bunch of summers as a kid in the east side of town doesn't mean you know anything about what's going on. So
Yeah.
that was useful, because when I said, "Oh yeah, I spent," they're like,
Mhm. Mhm.
"So what?"
Yes, yes.
Right.
John, so thank you so much. I mean, you bring up so many jewels here. So the first point that you made, I think, is just, I call it kind of client clarification. Like sometimes when folks don't know exactly what they need to know or what their questions are. So really having the time and patience to help with that clarification is something that folks want to might take a note of. Also the patience with people's lives. Again, a lot of these communities and community, organizers. I mean, it's like they have real lives. They're working, advocating 24/7, but again, their timeline, while it's urgent, is not always the researchers or the institution's timeline. So having some patience and empathy in that way. And then, I think that one of the words that I loved you said is being a bridge, and really understanding, I'm gonna do something about it, even though that's not what I, primarily intended to do, but I'm going to do something about it. And so I think that is so critical to developing relationships. And so John, thank you so much. And we're